Hey, everybody, Russell Gray, co-host of the Real Estate Guys radio show. And we're here now for episode 5 in our 8-part series, 8 steps to scaling your syndication business and riding shotgun. And our resident scaling expert, Staci Gray, is with us. Hey, Stace.
Hey there, nice to be here.
It's great to have you. Had fun in videos 1 to 4. We've gotten some good feedback, and that's always exciting. And as we're working through this series, for those of you that have just kind of happened to stumble upon video number 5, all the rest of the videos are in the show notes down below, and you don't need to watch them in order, but they're all there for you. But for those of you that don't know or aren't familiar, syndication is really just the art of aggregating money. Most real estate investors go out there and they invest in their own account. They use their own credit. They use their own capital. They use their own income, and then they build a portfolio. That's investing. But when you turn it into being a business, that's where you go and you raise money from partners, and you can do bigger projects. You can scale your business faster. And along with the scaling on the financial side comes the scaling on the operational side. It really is running a business. You know, the old adage in real estate investing is treat your real estate investing like a business. Syndicating is that on steroids. And so if you get serious about taking on partners and managing other people's money, you have to take a very professional approach. And the devil's in the details. Like, how do you organize a team? How do you set clear objectives? How do you execute a plan? How do you do all those things? That's what Staci helps syndicators do. She's helped me do it for Robert and I do it for 20 years now. And so we're putting these series out there because we see so many people getting involved in the syndication space, and everybody talks about marketing and raising money and legal and all that stuff. And you have to know all that stuff. But the part that a lot of people overlook is just how do you actually organize a business to grow and to grow quickly? And so, Stace, today we're going to be talking about what's missing in your syndication business. And you put together the outline. Tell me, why did you pick this? What are you seeing with your clients that you felt like this is something that needed to be discussed?
Sure. In the last video, we talk about the 4 pillars of your syndication business, which are raising capital, doing deals, managing processes, and leading people. And oftentimes, one of those may be stronger than the other. So there is a component that will be missing, and it could evolve and change at different times as you're scaling and growing your business. So it's important to have enough awareness around your business about what is working and what's not working so you can fill the gaps. So what's missing is, or I guess symptoms for what could be missing are you're solving the same problem over and over again. You go to raise capital for a deal and you don't have funding. You can't find deals. The processes are breaking down. You have groundhog every day, or you feel or you're saying things like, I can't find and keep good people. That's a sign that something's wrong, something's not working. And so that's a way to identify what is missing. Or another thing is that is an example of something that might be missing is if you aren't taking action. That means you don't feel confident in your infrastructure and what you have going on to move forward. So identifying that in your syndication business so that you can actually continue to scale it is key.
You know, there's for you old folks out there like me, you remember the old I Love Lucy series. And one of the classic episodes was Lucy and her friend Ethel got jobs working at a confectioner, making chocolates or on a chocolate assembly line. And what they had a responsibility for getting these chocolates processed as they came down the line, and they fell behind. And rather than own the problem and get the line slowed down or find a way to improve their processes, they just started eating the chocolate to hide the fact that they weren't able to get them wrapped before they were falling off the end of the assembly line. And so the manager thought that they were doing such a great job. He actually turned up the heat or turned up the speed, and the problem got worse and worse. So look it up on YouTube. It's hysterical, but it talks about the concept of first of all, if you cover up your mistakes and you don't get the lessons, and then you don't work as a team to let people know that this assembly line process is coming at you too fast. That's one thing. And then the other kind of analogy, the way I think of it, is like a relay team. And, you know, when you're handling processes and somebody's handling the front end of lead acquisition, and then somebody's handling the nurturing campaign, and then somebody's handling the client engagement, and somebody is handling the presentation of the offering, somebody is handling the execution of the documents, a collection of the money, and then the feedback, and all the way through the whole life cycle of a deal. Those gaps are where the baton gets dropped, right? Something doesn't happen that's supposed to happen. And then you're constantly having to go back and try to fix what didn't happen. Meanwhile, if you've got a machine built, which you should, then you've got stuff coming at you like on this chocolate assembly line faster than you can deal with it. And so I think that just that visual of understanding the problem that you're trying to fix is not, you can't cover it up. So Stace, I know that one of your core tenets in your culture, in your organization, and the clients you work with is the role of honesty and transparency. Talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So one of my favorite books of all time is The Speed of Trust by Stephen Covey Jr., which is Stephen Covey's son. And it talks about character and competency as the two key components of building a high trust environment. But having high trust means that each individual person is self-aware and honest with themselves, and then collectively as a unit and as a team that there is open lines of communication where conflict can be resolved. So sometimes people think high trust is high grace, and there is high grace and there is high accountability. And so if you have a high trust environment and you're attracting A players, high performers, the expectation is that I can count on you to follow through on what you said you were going to do. You can count on me to follow through on what I said am going to do. And if I'm not going to do with that, you can count on me to communicate to you. And further than that, if something does break down or something does go sideways, which will happen when you're building a business, especially if you're continually pushing for growth, you can count on the other person to come directly to you to resolve it in person directly, not going around you, backdooring it, side dooring it, anything like that, that you have that trust and transparency in that relationship, which means that you don't cover up mistakes. And having a culture where people are allowed to make mistakes, understanding that we're building a business with human beings and human beings make mistakes. And when they do, that collectively we can solve it as long as it's brought to our attention. If it's not brought to our attention, then that's not a high trust environment. So it's not a culture fit.
You know, I think that grace component is real important because I've been involved in organizations where a bunch of friends get together or a bunch of people who know each other from church all get together and they have a lot of forgiveness, they have a lot of grace, but they don't have any accountability and they don't have any standards. And so I think there needs to be a definition of what is forgivable and what is unforgivable, right? And you know, for me, it's like if we're all focused and the motives are pure, and I did my very best with what I had, and I made an honest mistake, then that's grace, right? Let's learn what happened. Why did it happen? Were you distracted? Was it a bad process? Did you not have the right equipment? Did we not train you properly? Is the assembly line coming at you too fast? What is happening here that we can go to fix? Now, if someone is nefarious, if someone is dishonest, if somebody is covering up, if somebody is ego driven instead of results driven, and we talked about that in previous videos, I think those are all signs where I don't know that there's less grace, but it's a harder conversation, right?
Yeah. Another one of my favorite books is The Five Dysfunctions of a Team. And when you don't address issues and people brush it under the rug, you're laying the foundation in your culture to just be completely rocky and unmanageable. I say that leading people is only tough if you don't have the tough conversations. And when you have those tough conversations, they don't have to, tough doesn't mean it has to be hostile or unfriendly or no empathy or no love. It just means that we are going to have a direct conversation. You and I want the same thing. We want to have a successful syndication business. I thought the path to get there was X, Y, and Z. You thought maybe it wasn't because you behaved in XYZ way. Where's the disconnect? Let's resolve it, because we need this assembly line to function at a very high level in order for us to do well by our investors, well by the communities where our deals are, and well by our culture and team, so we have fulfillment. Because the whole reason why you're building a syndication business is so that you can serve what you want. If you go back to video one, what you want it to create for you from a lifestyle perspective, and then how you want it to fulfill in the community from a mission perspective. And if you violate all your values, all your principles, and everything in the process, you have completely missed the mark in terms of building a scalable syndication business that fulfills you personally, the community, and the world at large.
Yeah, if you grow to resent your business, it's not going to scale. And I think you talked about speed of trust, but I think there's another thing here that's important. That's speed of the leader. And, the speed of the leader isn't just not your work output or how fast you work, but it's the moral tone you set in terms of these honest discussions, in terms of owning your own mistakes, because you're human too, and you're going to screw up. I screw up quite a bit, actually. And so I know that seems shocking to some people, but people who know me well know that it's actually a regular event. But I think that when you think about what's missing in a syndication business, maybe you expected it to be something a lot more tactical, and we're probably going to talk about some of that. But ultimately, it starts out at this higher level, because you can't fix processes if people are covering up problems. That's why I kind of gave that chocolate assembly line. I mean, they made their problem worse because they were trying to cover up the fact that they were overwhelmed by the workload, right? So when someone has to express the fact that, hey, I'm overwhelmed, I'm inadequate, I'm not up to this job, and they take it personally and they feel afraid to own that, then that's where you get this complete dysfunction. And the problem is, if you're the leader and you're in that position and you're the one setting that tone, it just infects the whole organization. So we don't mean to beat it to death, but just be very mindful of it, because it's a really important consideration. I see a lot of business people not take into account. It's like they have one standard for themselves and another standard for the team, and you can't do that. It's a standard for the organization. If you're part of the organization, you have to uphold the standard too. So, Stace, what else do you see when you're working with syndicators that you find missing in their businesses? These gaps where things fall through the cracks and things go sideways.
So if we stick with those four pillars that we discussed in the previous video, pillar one is, or one of the pillars is raising capital. Something that I see a lot of people do is think that the capital will be there when they're ready to raise it. So they may have a list, but they aren't really nurturing their list. They aren't staying in touch. People have vocally said, "Oh yeah, let me know when you have a deal, and I'll commit 100,000 or 200,000 or whatever the amount is." And then they actually have a deal, and then they realize their investor list is not as hot as they thought it was.
Yeah, Mary Poppins would call that a pie crust promise. Easily made, easily broken. If you remember the movie Mary Poppins.
Yes. So I see that a lot in the raising capital side. And you, during the syndication seminar that you do, you talk about building your brand and building your network is the most important segment in that seminar. And I often see people not put enough emphasis on really building their brand, and then they turned into being more transaction oriented versus relationship oriented. And the syndication business is a relationship business. So you're constantly planting seeds. That person may not sprout and come to fruition until a year or two or however long later, you don't know, but it's important to nurture from the beginning, even if you don't have a deal. So that's one thing I see for sure in the raising capital component.
Well, I like the planting seeds concept, because it implies nurturing, right? You can't get fruit out of a plant that you haven't nurtured to full maturity and full health. You can't get a transaction out of an investor that you haven't nurtured and, kind of groomed and, to full maturity. But by their very nature, an investor will invest. And so that's, a really important concept. And then the other thing is, the other way to think about it is you're painting a picture. And people are always trying to figure you out. The market is trying to figure you out. When you go out there and you present yourself to the market, they don't see the whole picture. They don't know who you are. It takes time to build that. And so if you are very cognizant and mindful and intentional about every brush stroke, every puzzle piece, everything you put out there that begins to paint a complete picture, as they, in their mind, assemble the picture of who you are and what you stand for. And really, there's two key things that you're focused on: building trust. And that trust is actually, it's building trust in ethics and building trust in competency. You want to prove to people or demonstrate to people that you're capable of doing the job, and that you're an honest person and a good steward of their money. Those are the two main things that you focus on in building your brand and building your network. There's other things, and there's lots of techniques in how to do that. We're not going to cover that here, but it is definitely a very important thing. And then I want to bring up one other thing that I think is important, and I've seen a lot of people do this, and that is that sometimes people hear a soundbite, or they hear a cliche or an adage, and then they build a whole business around that concept. Like there's this adage out there that says, if you find a great deal, the money will come, right? It's like Field of Dreams. If you build it, they will come. That sounds good in a motivational speech. That sounds good on a placard. But in the real world, it doesn't really work that way. We see so many people who go find a good deal and they just think the money will come. It won't come. It comes because of the strength of your brand and your network. So Stace, you said that, but I just wanted to add a little more color to that because it's an example of many things that you can fall into a trap of just taking a very simple saying and then building a whole business philosophy around it and finding out in the real world that it doesn't work. So yes, if you have a good deal, the money will take it, but that's in the context or in the backdrop of having built your brand and build your network. What I say at the seminar is build your brand, build your network, build your brand, build your network, build your brand, build your network. And then when you find a good deal, when you put it in front of your network and it's big enough based on the power and trust of your brand, it will fund. That's true. Without the brand and the network, a good deal just doesn't automatically fund. And that's the lesson. Okay. So Stace, what else? Where else are you seeing pain points for people out there?
Yeah, so in the doing deals component, two things in there I see. One is picking bad partners. So I think it's really important to get very clear on what your values are and your personal syndication philosophy, so you know if somebody is in alignment with you or not.
And bad
And
doesn't mean evil.
no,
It's just incompatibility.
yeah, not a good match. So finding partners that are a good match. So I see that often. And the other thing is trying to force a deal into your personal syndication philosophy, even though it isn't a match, just because you want to do one. So it ends up creating more friction and heartache and headache in the long run. We've had many of our clients get into mismatched partnerships and mismatched deals, and then we have to salvage them, fix them, figure out ways to transition out of them, and it's really messy and it's really costly and it's draining. So I think it's really important when you're doing deals to make sure that you're really, really clear on your personal syndication philosophy and the types of partners you want to align with, and stay true to that.
You know, it's interesting because we talk a lot about the relationship side of picking good partners and being linked by philosophy, by morals, by ethics, by um, the things that you aspire to be and how you want to show up in the market and building each other's brands and all those things. But the other part is the deal side of things, right? If the deal doesn't match the desire of the investor's funds and you have a heart, you have a philosophy, you have a desire, you've built a team, you've built relationships all around doing a type of deal. Maybe you're a developer and you force equity, you buy raw dirt, you build something that wasn't there before, you go from low value to high value, you go from cash to asset to cash, and you're not going to hold it for the production of income. You're not going to use it for tax breaks. You're not going to use it for long-term appreciation. You're just going to go build it, force the equity, sell it, and take the profits and go do the next project, right? That is a way of doing business. There's people that use syndication to be a developer. Other people are out there buying on the opposite end of the spectrum, a portfolio of notes. They're in it for the long haul. They're collecting a production of income. They're not doing any development. They're not doing any property management. They're not doing any property enhancement. They're just looking for streams of income with the low hassle factor. And there's a whole scale in between all of that. And so the challenge is if you go out there and you are, pitching to people this idea that you built this development company, but then their money wants a stream of passive income for the long haul, then you end up putting money in the wrong deal. That makes it an incompatible partner or an investor who's going to be, they're a limited partner, but they're still in the deal. And their money is going to go to work doing something that they didn't really want to do. It's going to give them a result that isn't really what they were after. And you may perform great based on what you intended to do, but it'll be very different than what the money wanted to do. And then you'll find you have unhappy campers. So that's a really, really important point too. Okay, so Stace, what else when you out there looking at people running their businesses? What kind of problems? What things are missing in people's businesses?
Yeah, so in the next pillar, managing processes, I think the biggest glaring one in that is not setting dedicated time aside to identify your processes. So you let the, tail wag the dog type of thing. And instead of just dedicating, in our business, we dedicate 3 days to do strategic planning, and we process map from start to finish everything about what it's going to look like with links to standard operating procedures. So we have a plan, a blueprint for how we're going to execute when we get to the points where we need an assembly line. And not setting that aside, then when you're in the heat of the moment and you're doing things, you're just reacting to what's happening versus actually running your business. So I think that's probably the biggest thing in terms of managing processes, is not actually having a process.
Right. It's like the
Um,
difference between sandlot football and professional football, right? In sandlot football, you just get a bunch of people together that all want to play. You sketch something out on the sand, in the dirt, maybe, or maybe you just get everybody up to the line and you do this, you do that, or just you hike the ball and run around until something good happens. Most of the time, nothing good will happen. That's a different level, lower level of play than when you look at a professional team that has great facilities, great equipment. They have people in very specific positions. Everybody has roles, responsibilities clearly defined on the field, in the administration. And it's just a completely different game. It's still the same basic game of football, but played at two very different levels. So real estate
right.
investing is real estate investing, but syndicating at a high level is like moving up to pro football. And this is kind of what we're talking
Yeah.
about.
And without processes, really, the syndicator is just creating a job for themselves. And so they're trapped in their business and they don't really have a business, they have a job. So processes is really the place where it allows them to work on their business and sit in their sweet spot instead of being constantly dragged back in to solve every day-to-day tactical activity that needs to be done. And it's draining. So I think that's probably the biggest thing in terms of managing processes. And then inside of leading people, I think, again, values and culture, it starts there. That's the foundation. So getting that right and not just throwing people at problems. So a lot of times I see businesses throw people at process problems. So instead of just solving the process, investing the time and the money to solve their process problems, they throw people at it, and it delays execution. It creates more headache and heartache, and it isn't scalable. So I think from the leading people perspective, getting the right people in the right seats and making sure that you manage their capacity so that they are in seats that where they get it, want it, and have the capacity to do it. And then not overly managing. So I think my personal philosophy is you micromanage until there's trust. And once there's trust, then you step back. What I see some people do is they abdicate, where like, okay, it's yours now, I'm not even going to be involved. Or, and then when it doesn't go well because you threw somebody into the deep end, then you come back in and you're like, okay, well, no, I don't want it done like that. I want it done like this. And then you micromanage them after you had already given them trust, which completely erodes their confidence.
Right.
So my philosophy, and I say it vocally, I'm going to micromanage you until we build trust and you feel confident. Once you feel confident and I have trust and you have trust in me, then I'll have less and less visibility. Now I have very little in a lot of my teams, and my only conversation is managing their capacity. How are you feeling? Are you able to handle everything? Do you need more help? Do you need more resources? How can I support you? And that's a much better place to be than feeling like I am just having a team of robots and making the decisions and they're just pushing the buttons. Or like little puppets where they're on strings. You don't really have a team then.
Yeah, or a life, because you're busy running around trying to pull all these strings, you know.
Yeah.
So you said a couple of things that I think are important. One is the idea of owning a business or having a business own you. And this scaling concept, building an organization around a culture and a set of processes, is a key to freedom. And then the other thing you talked about is working on your business instead of in your business. And, again, that for people that have been around, read the classic book, The E-Myth, you understand right away what that concept is. But if by some chance you've never read that book and you don't understand the concept, rather than have us try to explain it to you, Michael Gerber, Gerber, just like the baby food, wrote one of the all-time classic business books called The E-Myth, The Entrepreneur Myth, and explains exactly what we're talking about here, is how many people who claim to be entrepreneurs really just go out and build a jail for themselves, which is them doing everything from taking out the trash to, providing whatever the product or service is, or being the product or service. And they're so busy, what Michael Gerber says, doing it on the little treadmill. They never have time to come up for air. They never have space, can never take a vacation, can never get away. They never trust anybody. They're trapped. And, maybe they make a good living, maybe not. Most people burn out. And so the key, and he holds up the example of McDonald's as an example of something that had been engineered to a high level of efficiency and high level of processes, so much so that this business could go out and plant a new store anywhere in the world, hire minimum wage workers, and create a very consistent result in terms of a product and a profit. And so that notion that you could e-myth a business is really what the concept of scaling is all about. And of course, it's easy to read about that. The question is, how do you actually do it? And that's what we're working to cover here, is letting you know that there's a process for creating processes. There's a
Mhm.
process for scaling, and you have to master that or find someone to help you master that. And to Staci's point, you have to carve out time to do that. I like to use the adage that I only have 80%. 80% is 100% in terms of doing work. I got to save at least 20% of my time for cross training, personal development, professional development, and working on the business, improving processes, evaluating new infrastructure, equipment, software, whatever it is to create more efficiencies. And that's kind of a rule throughout the team. Now, do we adhere to that? No, it's like a guideline. It's like the speed limit, right? It gives you a range. You're sometimes going to get a little bit out of your skis, and sometimes you're going to be a little conservative, but at least it's an alarm bell that goes off that when you go past a certain point, it's like, okay, I'm starting to get a little stressed out here and I want to fix this. Well, there's still room in my life to fix it before it consumes me. And
Mhm.
don't let your business own you. Make sure you own your business. Great point.
Mhm.
Okay, so Stace, do you have anything else on your list? I know we could go on and on and on, but we want to hit the top ones.
I think those are the major ones, and especially in those four pillars that we referenced in the last video.
Okay. Well, again, folks, you learn by doing. I think one of the big things in life is especially when it comes to raising money, good people don't want to lose other people's money. And so they don't get into the syndication business, which leaves it only to the bad people who really don't care about other people's money. And that's a shame. So we're hoping that by providing this education and by letting you know that there's resources out there, that you can take your skill that you've developed in learning how to invest and or find people who know how to invest and raise money. And then you can go raise money around that and build a business, and you can get out a little bit over your skis, but know that you've got a lifeline and you've got folks that know how to help you get to the next level before it completely implodes. And so there's this spot in between failure and comfort called the growth zone. And some people call it the discomfort zone, right? You have to learn to be outside your comfort zone, but you have to be inside of the failure zone, right? To the catastrophic zone, somewhere in there. And where you are in that is going to depend a lot on your personality, but it's also going to depend a lot on the team and the resources and the environment you put yourself in. How quickly can you find an answer and get unstuck when you're facing a problem that you don't know how to solve? That's the key. So however you choose to do it, make sure that you have the right advisory team, make sure that you have the right peer group, maybe a mastermind group, that you're in the right culture, that you're in the right network or groups of them. Join as many as you can so that when you do face those problems that we're all going to face as syndicators, that you can quickly find somebody that's been there, done that, that has the expertise, that's qualified to have an opinion to help you get out of your jam. Stace, any closing thoughts for this episode?
I absolutely agree with what you just said. And from my experience too, with the clients that I work with, because we spend a lot of time doing the business operations side of it, but a lot of them are plugged into your syndication mentoring club, and it has been invaluable for them to navigate some of the things that they're going through with the operational support, but also the syndication support. So definitely plugging into a community tribe that can help you tactically, but also can help you strategically is huge.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, folks. So this is the end of video 5, and we'll see you in the next one, which is going to be video 6, 10 core processes to scale your syndication business. So stay tuned, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks a lot. Before you go, 3 things. Number 1, subscribe. When you subscribe, you build up our subscription base, and that helps us reach more people. But even more important, it helps us attract great guests and subject matter experts to share their ideas and information with you. Number 2, click that notification bell to make sure that when we do post a new video on this hot topic, you're notified right away. And number 3, share. Please share this information with friends. Help them get on board this bus. Help them protect and preserve their wealth to take advantage of what's going on in the world today. All right. Thanks so much, and we'll see you in the next video.